Who are you following? Jesus or somebody or something else? If I was to ask you to tell me, and I'm not, I know that many of you would say Jesus. And that would be true. I'm following Jesus. Of course I am. But is that really the case? Let me give you a way to be really sure. When you think about where you spend your time and resources, does Jesus get the best of your time? Is the kingdom of God the first place after IRD, who takes the tax for us, that you invest your income? Or do you spend more time and money on other things? You see, where we choose to spend our time and our money, those are our priorities. See, everybody is following somebody or something. Or to put it another way, everyone is a disciple. The question is, are you a disciple? The question isn't are you a disciple? It's who or what are you a disciple of? I'm going to assume that because you're here, you want to follow Jesus and not play on your devices. That you want to put him first in your life. That you want following him to be your number one priority. And so the question then becomes, how do we follow Jesus in our modern world where we're all so busy and in so much of a hurry? When we're addicted to our devices, like our phones, where studies tell us that on average we check them 80 times a day. That got you thinking, didn't it? I mean, I think I've probably checked it 4 times just since I got here this morning. Mainly because I'm looking around for somebody who's not here. The excessive ping, yes. When excessive stress is just part of life. When burnout just seems one more pressure away. When we often seem to be anxious. When everyone seems to be in a hurry and we live in a world with so many different ways of seeing the world or different worldviews. Worldviews that are often at odds with or even anti a Christian worldview or a Christian way of living. So in a world like this, what does it look like to follow Jesus? When the disciples left everything to accept Jesus' invitation to come follow me and I will show you how to fish for people, they began a journey of discipleship with Jesus, a journey of being taught by and learning from the greatest teacher, the greatest rabbi that there has ever been or ever will be. In doing so, they accepted an opportunity for a discipleship journey that they would have thought had long since passed them by. Why was that? Well, to understand that, we need to understand a little of first century Israel. Thank you. It was common to see rabbis walking along the road or teaching at the village synagogue. The word rabbi means master or teacher. Rabbis were the very highly respected teachers, not just of the Torah or the Bible of their day, but of life of living with God. Most of them were itinerant, meaning that they would travel from place to teach. And following them, it would be a small group of students called Talmudim. Now, the Hebrew word Talmud literally means learner. But it can also be translated as student or follower. And the most common English translation we have, and you've probably all thought, okay, I know where that's going, is disciple. But a growing body of scholars, and I wouldn't necessarily say we'd call ourselves scholars, but even the national leadership team the other day was saying the same, starting to argue that the best word we have in the English language to capture the full meaning of the Hebrew word Talmud is apprentice, which we talked a little bit about last week. Now, education in first century Israel wasn't about learning information. It was formational. And the goal was not just to learn about something, but to become someone. And discipleship or apprenticeship was the pinnacle of the first century Jewish educational system. To unpack that and understand what that means, let's take a closer look at school in the first century. And here I would love to see the kids drop what they're doing now and come up here because I've got something for you. Stephen, you might have to move back a little bit, please.
Oh, what a shame.
Okay, any other kids want to join me? Because you've got to teach the others. Okay, who's going to open the door and find out what's in behind it? All right, now be careful, stuff might fall out, all right? Okay, so Rella, you can do it this week. Whoop, open up, open up, open up, open up. So what's in there? So won't someone take one thing out? Okay, boys. There we go. Okay, so who has the Bible? Okay, so let's turn around and face the congregation. Okay, so the Bible. Now, the Bible of Old Testament Israel was not the Bible we know today. It's what we know as the Old Testament, or sometimes it's called the Hebrew Bible, because it was before Jesus. Right? The bit about Jesus and afterwards hadn't been written. Ty, what have you got? Okay, so do you know what this is? Come on, who knows whose that is? It's from Star Wars, yeah?
It's Yoda.
Yoda, baby Yoda. But the part I really want to show you is this bit. Okay, so this says, who'd like to read it for me? Iris, would you like to read it?
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed
be your name. So, do you know what that start off? This is our Lord's Prayer. And JL's got a whole lot of these, one for each of you. Okay, and what we're going to ask you to do is to memorize it. All right? And, you know, I want to make sure that, you know, you feel valued. So, over here, there's going to be a whole lot of things that when you memorize it, you can choose from. But you've got to memorize it first and show us when you memorize it. All right? Now, for some of you who might find it a little bit tough, because that's the thing, that's why I've got, what have you got there, Blake?
Come follow me.
Come follow me. And where's it from?
Matthew 4, verse 19.
Matthew 4, verse 19. Okay, so if for you reading is a bit tough, all right, or for some of our younger kids, let's work with come follow me. Okay, what have you got, Ryrose?
Books of the Bible.
Okay, so this is all the books of the Bible. The first 5 that are here are what's called the Torah. All right, they're the books of the law. Does anyone know the first 5 books of the Bible? Close. Yeah. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Okay. And then we have on there, sorry Iris, can I have that again please? We have here the books of the Old Testament and then the books of the New Testament. Now, in the first century Israel, you started school, who likes going to school? Okay, well I'm sorry you two can't, because you're girls. In first century Israel, girls didn't go to school. All right? Bad luck, eh? But boys, you started at 5. All right? And by the age of, Blake, you just turned 12, didn't you? This week. Yep. By Blake's age, they had learnt, because the Old Testament was the book, the Bible as they knew it was their textbook. Okay? And by the age of 12, they had learnt the 5 books of the Old Testament. Now, it wasn't just learning, like Nigel says, the names. That was learning the whole books, all 5 books. I was going to actually go and do a count and didn't get around to it. So if someone wants to do a count of how many verses are in the first 5 books of the Bible, and come and tell us next week, or put it on Facebook. Awesome.
So word for word, they had to know them all.
They had to word for word. All right. Okay. Laine. Okay. How old are you now, love? 15. Okay. Well, you've got 2 more years. Okay. If you were in first century Israel and you were a boy, sorry, I've got to trick on you. You're a young person. I've got you at this age. You would have 2 more years to learn the entire Old Testament. From the very first word in Genesis to the last word in Malachi. All right? That's why when you see things about the disciples and that they're able to quote what's happening. So, if we go back to the first bit, primary school, which was called Bet Sefer, the house of the book. By the time you were 12, most people, that was it, they were gone. They were no longer at school, they went back to apprentice at home under the family business or when I worked on the family farm. All right? So you guys can all go sit down now because your education is finished. Except I'm going to pick on... Finn, you're still here, so you can come here with me. All right? Okay. So, for most, they went home. But the best of the best, they went on to what we would call college or Bet Midrash. Okay? And that's where they would learn the rest of the Old Testament. Thanks, buddy. You can go sit down. And then the vast bulk were over. It's a little bit like, for me, when I was at school, it's different to today, I know, but when I was at school by year 11, as we now know it, at the end of year 11, the majority of kids left school and they went into an apprenticeship or something. All right? Year 12, so in my class in year 9, there was about 300 of us. By year 12, there was probably about 100 of us. By year 13, there was, I think we managed to hit 10 for a couple of weeks. All right? The numbers dropped off markedly. And so it was in ancient Israel. You see, the best of the best of the best would go on to apprentice under a rabbi who you asked to teach you. They didn't ask to teach, they didn't choose you, you chose them. So let's say you were one of the few who became an apprentice to a rabbi. From that point on, your entire life was organized around 3 driving goals. Firstly, to be with your rabbi. You would leave your family and your village and follow your rabbi 24/7. Apprenticeship was deeply relational. You would walk behind your rabbi on the road, eat every meal with them, keep Sabbath together, be with them all day. Secondly, was to become like your rabbi. The heart and soul of apprenticeship was to be with your rabbi with the goal of becoming like your rabbi. You would imitate their whole life, copy their mannerisms, adopt their figures of speech because you wanted to be like them. And finally, to do as your rabbi did. This was the ultimate goal of an apprenticeship to a rabbi, to become a rabbi yourself. And if you made it through the long process of apprenticeship and training, then when your rabbi felt you were ready, he would turn to you and say something like this: okay, you're ready. It's time to go and make disciples. Does that sound familiar? Matthew 28:19, part of the Great Commission. That's what it meant to be a disciple in first century Israel, and it's still what it means to be a disciple today. There are still 3 driving goals when we really make following Jesus our number 1 priority. And those 3 driving goals that we need to organize our lives around are firstly, to be with Jesus. Secondly, to become like Jesus. And thirdly, to do as he did. So let's unpack that a little with him. Jesus himself called his disciples to be with him. The first goal of an apprentice of Jesus. Still today. to spend every possible moment of, aware of, and connected to him. I like how the Dutch monk Thomas à Kempis described this as a familiar friendship with Jesus. And I don't know about you, but that's something that sounds really good to me, having Jesus as my close personal friend, just like those disciples who Jesus called his friends in John 15, verse 15. However you describe it, it's discipleship or apprenticeship. Through Jesus, we are enveloped in the love and joy and peace that flows between the Trinity, that is God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And we live in connection with that love and to that love. But like every good relationship, it takes work to maintain and to build it. We need to be intentional in turning our minds and our hearts to God all through the day. And that takes practice and requires us to break old habits and create new ones. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Our second goal as apprentices is to become like Jesus. The very heart of being an apprentice. To be transformed from the inside out so that we think like Jesus, feel like Jesus, talk like Jesus, live and love like Jesus. When Simon and Andrew and the other disciples answered Jesus' call to come follow me, they began a journey as students of Jesus, the teacher. Over the next 3 years, he taught them so that when he needed them to go and make disciples, they were fully trained. And so it is with us. Answering Jesus' call to come follow me is just the start of our training to become like him. For most of us, that doesn't happen in a flash. To be fully trained, to become like Jesus, is a lifelong journey. Yes, there will be a time when he says, okay, you've learned enough, go and make disciples. But that's not the end of our journey of apprenticeship. Our training, our discipleship, our apprenticeship continues. There's always more to learn, more that he will teach us so that we can become more like him and do as he did. And this process of training and apprenticeship to Jesus is called spiritual formation. It's the process by which our spirit and our inner being is formed to be like Jesus himself. And over the course of our deeper, wider journey, we'll have the opportunity to try at some spiritual practices to help our spiritual formation. But not just to try them, to get them and to change the way we do things, to change our habits. Imagine what Jesus would look like expressed through your personality, through your gender, through your ethnicity, through your stage of life, through your culture. Imagine if you were to become more loving, more joyful, more peaceful, more patient and kind than you are even now. Imagine what life would be like for you and those around you if you were to become more like Jesus. The final goal of a disciple, to do as Jesus did. When Jesus says to you, come follow me, he's also saying, I will train you what to do. End of last week, beginning of this week, we had a plumber here to fix the problem with the hot water. He's similar age to me, and so he's been around for a while, and he finished his apprenticeship many years ago. What he didn't just know all about plumbing, he knew how to plumb and to do the things that need to be done and to solve problems. And thank goodness he did. I think we've finally solved a problem that's been plaguing us for quite a while. In the same way, the goal of an apprentice of Jesus isn't just to know all about Jesus, but to be able to do the things that he did. The goal of an apprentice is to join him in his work of preaching, teaching, serving, healing, and prophesying. And this may sound impossible to you right now, but the more you are with Jesus, as you become like him, you will naturally find yourself saying and doing the kinds of things he said and did.
Go ahead and pull out your companion guide for this course. In it are weekly exercises, questions for reflection, short readings, and more.
These are your companion guides.
We'll invite you to take the spiritual health reflection. This is a self-assessment we developed for you to plot yourself on a spiritual journey. Once you have a baseline, you can return and retake the assessment in the future in order to better name Jesus' invitation to you along the way. To access the spiritual health reflection, just follow the link in your guide to visit practiceintheway.org. Finally, in each session, Ken Shigematsu, who's a pastor and writer on the spiritual life, will direct us into our practice for the coming week.
Thank you for joining us. It's such a gift to connect with you in this way. The best way to be with Jesus is to develop a daily prayer rhythm. You may already have a daily prayer rhythm, or you may not. But whatever your approach, you will see in our guide that our exercise for week 1 is to develop a daily prayer time and place to connect with God in solitude and silence. This exercise can be done in a few minutes, or you can take up to an hour. The key is to start where you are, not where you feel you should be. If 2 or 3 minutes is all you have, start there and then take the next step. I like to get up early and go for a walk with our golden retriever, and then sit in a quiet spot in our house. Your morning with Jesus might begin by making a cup of tea or coffee, or you might sit cross-legged on the floor, breathing slowly in and out through your nose. You might begin by praying a psalm, such as the 23rd Psalm, or reading another scripture. Here are a few suggestions as you develop your practice of prayer. First, identify a quiet place that is distraction-free. This could be a corner in your home or a nearby park. Find somewhere where you can focus and be at peace. Second, identify a quiet time. For many people, first thing upon waking is the best possible time to pray. But for you, it may be before bed, or while your baby is napping mid-morning, or on a lunch break. One helpful guideline is to give God your best time of day, and then let the rest of your hours flow out of this time with God. Third, come to quiet. If at all possible, put your phone away in another room. Start with a few deep breaths in and out of your nose. Give your mind and body time and space to calm down. This may take a few minutes. Remember, you're not in a hurry. Fourth, open your heart to God in prayer. Though this may feel unfamiliar and you might not know where to begin, you don't have to start from scratch. For thousands of years, the followers of Jesus have used the Psalms, a collection of poetic prayers found in the middle of the Bible, as a guide for daily prayer. The Psalms were designed to be actively prayed or recited, not just read. When we're struggling to pray, the Psalms give us structure to pray and words to express our deepest emotions. You might start with Psalm 1. You could read a short psalm or a portion of a longer psalm each day until you finish the entire book. As I said, this can be done in 5 minutes, or it can easily take up to an hour. Whatever it looks like, the goal this week is to set aside time daily to be with Jesus. The spiritual journey will involve our entire lifetime as we deepen and are transformed by our friendship with Jesus. God bless you as you experience God's presence in silence and solitude.
Let's review what we've covered in session 1. Following Jesus is based on the first century practice of rabbis and apprentices. For us today, to follow Jesus means to apprentice under him. To apprentice under Jesus is to organize your life around 3 driving goals: to be with Jesus, to become like Jesus, and to do as he did. Apprenticing under Jesus means practicing a way of life. And one of the best ways to begin to be with Jesus is through a daily prayer rhythm, where you create a time and a place for solitude, silence, and prayer.
So to close this part of our service, before we sing, to finish our service, let's say together, let's pray together, Psalm 1. I invite you to either sit or stand as you feel comfortable as I lead you. So let's go. Oh, the joys of those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or stand around with sinners, or join in with mockers. But they delight in the law of the Lord, meditating on it day and night. They are like trees planted along the riverbank, bearing fruit each season. Their leaves never wither, and they prosper in all they do. But not the wicked. They are like worthless chaff, scattered by the wind. They will be condemned at the time of judgment. Sinners will have no place among the godly. For the Lord watches over the path of the godly, but the path of the wicked leads to destruction. One thing that I was taught, well, not so much taught, but was introduced to many years ago, was when you go through, sometimes when you're praying verses or psalms, in this case from the Bible, if that's what you choose to do, put you yourself in and talk about, rather than like sometimes we'll talk about I, King David in the Psalms talks about I, talk about, you, put your name in there. Please don't put yourself in the wicked, because I'm sure that's not you. But if that's where you feel God, you're really having to lament, then by all means do. But sometimes, and just make that your own. Now, as I say on the video, if you've already got a prayer time, a regular prayer time of doing things, and a way of doing prayer, then we're not saying stop. This is about for those who may be struggling, who may be finding, okay, how do I get into prayer? Because we've got people in the church, Elena particularly, prayer is one of her gifts. But for a lot of others, it's like, where do I start? And that's what this is about, taking that first step and praying the Psalms. And I've been doing that. I must admit, not all of a sudden I go, I missed a day. But it's actually quite good to actually do that.